but they will be shamed or canceled as a consequence of expressing sexual interest. This is the world we live in today. But let's dive a little deeper into this issue, because it's not immediately obvious why sexual rejection would be so much more intensely painful for men than other forms of rejection, though it is patently obvious that it is experienced as such by the vast majority of men. And we can consider that the pain of sexual rejection cuts deeper because, from an evolutionary perspective, the survival of the individual is of lower priority than the perpetuation of its genetics. That through the lens of evolutionary theory, an organism that lives a long and healthy life but fails to reproduce viable offspring has failed as an individual because its genetic lineage has gone extinct just as certainly as if he had never lived long enough to reach sexual maturity. On the other hand, the individual that leaves behind an abundance of offspring, ideally with different mothers, as the genetic diversity will increase the likelihood that at least some of his children will survive to sexual maturity, is an evolutionary success. In a very literal way, sex is life. And sexual opportunity is both a determinant and a signal of individual success. On the other hand, while lack of sex is not literally death, it is symbolically something much more pernicious, namely extinction. This means that on a very deep level, rejection from a woman not only signifies that the man in question does not deserve to reproduce, but that, by extension, he does not really deserve to exist, as his continued genetic existence depends on his ability to successfully reproduce. In this context, it's important to keep in mind that biologists do not declare a species extinct when all of the individuals of that species are actually dead, but when opportunities for reproduction become non-existent. The inability to reproduce is extinction, and the threat of extinction colors every female rejection. And this is a uniquely male threat, as there are few women who could not get sex if they wanted it. It's this asymmetrical privilege, coupled with a failure in perspective taking, that contributes to women's lack of understanding and frustration regarding the importance of sex for men. However, it doesn't end here. Not only does female rejection carry the threat of extinction, but it carries the threat of perdition, as modern man uses woman as the crucible for his self-worth. Let's look into this further. The idea of utilizing to publicly reveal private merit is very old. And through most of human history, men used contests of arms to do this. Whether in actual combat or in ritualized simulations of combat, the idea was that the victor was not just the strongest, not just the most capable, but the most deserving. In short, the victorious combatant, especially given the chaos and vicissitudes of war, was the one that God favored. This meant that entering into combat was, in a symbolic sense, putting oneself in God's scales to determine whether one had the right stuff. Now, before I go any further, if you're liking what you're hearing, please consider sending this episode to someone who might benefit from its message, because it's word-of-mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. You can also hit the super thanks button, the three little dots in the lower right-hand corner, and tip me in proportion to the